I've been a financial advisor now for over 20 years. And one of the nice things about having that level of experience is I can see subtle differences between clients that maybe a client doesn't even realize about themselves. But I've experienced it many times in the past, and I know it may have a big impact on them being able to retire early. It may have a big impact on them being able to enjoy retirement. And it may even have a big impact on whether they retire or not. And I don't want anything holding you back. I want you to be able to live your best life in retirement when you decide it's right to retire. So let me share with you what this subtle difference is that has a huge impact on a client's success in retirement. And that is, there tends to be two groups of people. And I wish I could predict ahead of time who is who, but it's surprisingly hard to do that. However, once we get to the key moment that I'm about to share with you, it's very clear which category a client is in, and I can help them regardless of which category they're in. The first one is a client that's really a lot of fun to work with because they really are looking forward to being able to retire. And so they come in to me and they say, hey, Azul, here's how much money I'd like to be able to spend in retirement. This is what a fun retirement looks like. And their question to me is, do I have enough money to retire? And if I don't, what do I have to do to get there? You know, one of the most joyous parts of my job is when I get to share with somebody, you've made it. You have enough money. You can now retire. And with one group of clients, you can just see the relief almost instantaneously fall onto them when they begin to internalize that they've actually done it. You know, they've worked 20, 30, 40 years and sacrificed and put money away. And now I've had adult clients, I've had 50, 60, 70-year-olds cry in meetings, just that they're so happy that they finally have crossed that goal line and they don't have to work, they don't have to have all this pressure on their shoulders. So that's one class of clients. But then there's another class that when I tell them they have enough money to retire, they have a lot more questions. And they really want to dig in, and they don't want to take that leap. And candidly, that in almost every case is driven by fear, a fear of the unknown. And there's a great quote from the movie After Earth, which is a Will Smith movie. He and his son, Will Smith's biological son, actually star in this movie together. And the quote there is,
"Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice."
That quote reminds me of this transition, of this challenge that people are going through. Is they're fearful of the unknown. But if I can get them past this chasm, if I can get them through this unknown, boy, the vast majority of the time, 90% plus, people look back at their pre-retirement years while they were still working. And they think, boy, if I could have retired sooner, that would have been a really, really good thing. I wish Azul had been able to talk me into retiring earlier. And that's my goal here. So if you're fearful about retirement, if you're not sure what your life looks like in retirement, if your identity is tied into your job, if you want to make the leap, but you're not quite sure, this video is for you. So what can we do? The most important things we can do is we can give you clarity. I wish I could give you certainty, but a good financial advisor can give you clarity and they can give you confidence. So at least the financial aspects of the plan, you can check that box and say, okay, the reason I'm hesitant to retire is not because of the financial aspects. There's something else going on, and it's probably something mentally, right? I mean, you are getting something from working. As much as you might say that you want to retire, you're getting something from that, and you're hesitant to give it up. And oftentimes, what people are hesitant to give up, and it's a double-edged sword, right? When you've been very successful in your career, when you're making good money, when you have a network, when you can make things happen very easily, it's hard to walk through that door to retirement because for many of us, that's a one-way door. We can't go back 6 months later. Most of us cannot. Some people can. it's hard to go back 6 months later and say, hey, I changed my mind. So I absolutely want you to make a thoughtful and deliberate decision, and I want you to make a good decision. I want you to make a great decision. And the definition in my book of what a great decision is you look back in 2 years, you look back in 3 years and say, I'm really glad I made that decision. Let's talk about some things. And it's easy to see the downside of retiring and saying, okay, I'm going to give up my identity at work. I'm going to give up my power at work. I'm going to give up my friend network. You know, if you're working now, when you make a phone call professionally, people are probably getting back to you in 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours. And when you retire and you can no longer do things for other people at the level that you can now, that's when you're going to find out who's your friend and who's returning your call because you can do something for them. And unfortunately, the reality is, well, for a lot of us, you know, the days of getting a call back in 2 hours are going to end when we retire. And so that's one of the negatives, but there's a lot of positives. So let's talk about how to make a good decision, how you can make the right decision for you. And today's video is not about the financial aspects. Let's assume that box has been checked. And now you're trying to decide, do I retire? And so let me start with this. It's just natural for all of us to think that our health, our vitality, our energy levels are going to stay the same. And they're going to stay the same for a long time. And I wish that was the case, but the reality is it's probably not, right? I mean, you probably feel, once you turn 50, you know, you may not say anything outside of a very tight friend group, but you and I know what I'm talking about, right? It hurts a little bit more in the morning. You have some more aches and pains. Maybe you pick up yoga and you push that back, but you know it's still there. It's a little harder to go from running a 5K 3 times a week to running that 10K on a Saturday morning on, you know, the 4th of July or Memorial Day weekend or Labor Day weekend. You feel that on Sunday morning where maybe in the past you didn't feel it. So, you know, our bodies are our biological vehicle that we get to go through life on. And unfortunately, as a biological vehicle, it starts to break down. It's just the nature, both physically, but then also mentally. You know, we're not going to be as sharp in 10 years and 20 years as we are today. So you've heard me say it before. If you're 60 years old, unfortunately, you likely have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time remaining. In 1,000 weeks, turns out it's 240 months. Turns out that is 80 quarters. That's not a lot of time, and I want you to get the most out of it. And just ask yourself this question. You know, once you have a major health issue, and you know, hopefully we all pass away peacefully in our sleep at night, but that's not going to be the experience for many of us. Unfortunately, we may have one or more trips in the back of an ambulance going to the hospital. Maybe we have a heart attack. Maybe we have some other health issue where we have to be transported quickly to the hospital. And when you're in your 20s, your 30s, and 40s, we are the ones pulling over to the side of the road to let that ambulance go by. But when we're in our 70s and 80s, there's a chance we're going to be in the back of that ambulance. And I want you to ask yourself, when that moment comes, if that moment comes, are you going to be glad that you worked until you're 70? Are you going to be glad that you turned down the ability to retire 10 years earlier? You know, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients, and I can tell you, yes, the transition into retirement is difficult. But once you've made that transition, very, very few people 2 years later, 3 years later say, you know what, I wish I had kept working. The secret to a happy retirement is you have to plan. You get out of it what you put into it. So the first phase of retirement is it's going to feel like a vacation. It's going to feel great, right? You're going to relax on the beach. You're going to, if you enjoy having alcohol occasionally, you're going to enjoy a margarita on the beach. You're going to do some travel. You're just going to feel that pressure come off of your shoulders. And that's what's called the vacation phase. But then the next phase, and most people go through this. Now, if you plan ahead, you can go through phase 2 and 3 of retirement before you retire. And phase 2 is this feeling of loss, kind of what I was sharing earlier. Phase 2 is, people aren't returning your phone calls like they used to. And it's not as easy for you to make things happen like when you were working. You've lost that power base. You're losing your physical strength. There is some decline that's taking place physically and mentally. So after vacation, the next phase is this feeling of loss. The next phase is what I call trial and error. And in the trial and error, you are trying to redefine yourself. You're trying to find your next purpose. Some people get lucky and the very first thing that they try, they're like, I love this. Maybe you've always wanted to be the high school football coach, an assistant coach for the football team. Maybe you played in college and you want to go back to those glory days as a coach. And, for some people, it's like, wow, I really enjoy this. And for other people, it's like, oh, you know what? I forgot. There's Saturday morning practices. There's, the game day debriefs and the film reviews that you have to do. And so you might have thought that you want to do that, but you tried and it's like, this isn't my thing. So you try something else. But eventually, if you stick at it, if you work as hard at having a happy retirement as you did at having a successful career, eventually the vast majority of people find their next passion. Out of hundreds of clients, maybe one or two never found that next passion, but for the most part, we all find it, whether it's being with our adult kids and maybe taking care of our grandchildren, or spending more time with our aging parents, or being involved in a not-for-profit, or slow traveling around the world. 99% of my clients find that next passion, and I'm confident you will as well. And then you're at phase 4. Now you've gone through the valley of retirement. And phase 4 is where you have that new identity, you have that new purpose, you have that joy, but you know what? It's the joy and the fun without the negatives of the pressure on you. So if you're suffering from fear, I want to go back to that quote that I started the video with in the movie After Earth, which is a science fiction movie. But the quote that danger is real, but fear is not. Fear is a mental concept. And so if you're fearful about what retirement's going to look like, I want you to acknowledge it, but I don't want you to keep it from becoming the best version of yourself, which, if you're in your late 40s, in your mid 50s, and you financially can afford to retire, for a lot of us, that best version of ourselves is a retired version of ourselves, where we don't have the pressure, where we're not building somebody else's dream, where we're moving on to the next phase of our life, where we're not clinging to what we did for the previous 3 decades, but rather we're stretching and we're reaching for this next phase of your life. That, as a financial advisor for over 20 years, that reaching for that next phase of your life and evolving in becoming that best version of yourself in retirement for many of us. There is no right or wrong answer. And obviously I'm making a strong case for considering retiring early. I'm not a big fan of retiring in your 20s and 30s. You still have a lot of life in front of you there, and I think work can be incredibly rewarding. But if you're in your late 40s, if you're in your early 50s, if you're anywhere before 65, I think it's highly likely you're going to look back and be glad that you got more than your 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time. And part 2 to this video is this video up here, where I talk about 5 reasons to retire as soon as you can. I'll see you in that video. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.